This is Selma Schimmel for the Group Room in Chicago, where we are at the 2012 Multidisciplinary Symposium in Thoracic Oncology, which is brought to you by ASTRO, IASLC, ASCO, and the University of Chicago. We're joined by Dr. Daniel Christoph, who's a medical oncologist at the University of Colorado at the Anschutz Medical Campus, where he works at Dr. Fred Hirsch's Biomarker laboratory. Dr. Christoph is also an IASLC Young Investigators Award recipient. How are you? Welcome.
Thank you for the kind introduction. I really appreciate it.
Let's talk about your research. You presented a talk here, and what was that about?
At the University of Colorado, Denver, I performed several different research projects. All of them focus on biomarkers for chemotherapy, with common cytotoxics like, for example, pemetrexed. And we still want to evaluate biomarkers which are able to predict response or sensitivity or resistance, for example, to the multi-target antifolate pemetrexed. And we focus on thoracic malignancies like malignant pleural mesothelioma and non-small cell lung cancer. And we not only want to find biomarkers for the current treatment, we also want to evaluate the incidence of novel targets for novel therapeutics. And the study I'm going to present today afternoon is a study on folate receptor alpha and thymidylate syntase. Thymidylate syntase is a known biomarker for pemetrexed sensitivity or resistance, but data about folate receptor alpha in non-small cell lung cancer are highly limited. And in the last years, two novel drugs have entered the clinical development. These are drugs like immunotoxins. One of the names is, for example, EC145, or another one is therapeutic antibody named falituximab. And falituximab has been investigated in a big phase 3 trial in ovarian cancer, but not in lung cancer. Because in lung cancer we don't know enough about the target. And that's a problem. If you do not know, if you don't have enough information about the target, it's difficult to perform novel clinical trials. And in our study, we found that a subgroup of non-small cell lung cancer patients, namely patients with adenocarcinoma, they show a high expression of FRA, folate receptor alpha, and this means these novel drugs or novel antibodies or novel immunotoxins should be rather evaluated in the subgroup of non-small cell lung cancer patients because, unfortunately, squamous cell carcinoma patients show a very, very low expression, so we do not expect any benefit of these novel agents for these patients. A lot of lung cancer researchers focus on mutations, focus, for example, on EGFR, KRAS, and ALK, but the huge majority of Caucasian patients do not have mutations or other kind of genetic abnormalities. So I think we must also put more effort in the research of other targets beside receptors, for example, or other targets that might have a high incidence in the huge majority of non-small cell lung cancer patients. If you look at the talks of these meetings, a lot of talks focus, for example, on 20% of non-small cell lung cancer patients with EGFR mutation, or ALK, which is less than 10% of the patients, but we must find targets for the majority.
When you go back to Germany, where your research will go and what you'll take away from America back to Europe in your ongoing research?
Yeah, I worked with a pharmaceutical company in the United States to help them to develop a novel therapeutic antibody in non-small cell lung cancer. And because of all the conversations I had with them and all the discussions, we are now planning novel clinical trials, for example, for mesothelioma patients in Europe with the same novel therapeutic antibody. So this is a practical example what I can bring back from the United States to Europe, some novel clinical trials, which is a great experience because I found out in Denver that the target is expressed not only non-small cell lung cancer, it's also expressed in mesothelioma. So I had the idea, let's try the novel therapeutic antibody also in this disease and I talked with some other people in the United States, and we are currently planning an international clinical trial. This is a very good experience.
Talk to us about the differences you see in patient attitudes and public attitudes when it comes to healthcare and oncology in the US and Europe, because you do have this interesting now dual perspective.
Yeah, I think the American companies, they put a lot of effort in giving information to patients about their disease, making nice brochures. Or, for example, if you visit the homepage of a lot of American pharmaceutical companies, they have very nice homepages for patients. This is something that is in Europe not as developed as it is in the United States, that the patients can gain information about their disease, about putative treatment options. I think there is still some room for improvement in Europe.
Could you elaborate? What do we have here that's special? I think it would be great, as there's so much question amongst Americans about our healthcare system. You have now the perspective of different healthcare systems. What have you learned, and what do we have here that's special?
There are several points. The first point is the medical doctors have much more time to perform research. So, for example, they can work half-time in the clinic and half-time in the lab. Or this allows them not only to perform research, they can also focus on novel therapeutics, they can read more interesting papers, it's easier for them to be up to date. This is difficult in Europe, and I think we should try that. We give in Europe more medical doctors like I am the opportunity to read more or to attend more meetings, to be more up to date. This is a very good thing in the United States. But I think you should keep a balance, that you should treat patients at least half-time, because if you see, just in case, a patient's only once a month, this is not good for the patient and this is not good for the doctor. So a good balance is, I think, a very important issue, and I know a lot of doctors at the University of Colorado, Denver, that keeps this balance.
What about the patients? What are some of the key differences in the mentality and, perhaps medical perspectives between US patients and European patients?
I think the American patients ask more by themselves for novel therapeutics, and maybe they trust less in the decisions of the doctors. In Europe, we have the feeling, it might be an old feeling, that patients believe the things that the doctors decide and that the doctors recommend are the best for the patients. They don't question whether the doctors really do the best for the patients or do the best for the clinic. I think patients in the United States are more aware of this problem, that doctors might be influenced by economics or by other things like pharmaceutical companies.
Your IASLC Young Investigators Award, what did that do for you as a researcher?
So this award was the opportunity for me to go abroad, to leave Europe and to go to the United States for 2 years. Without this award, it is highly difficult to come to the United States for European researchers. So I'm very grateful to the organization.
And I want to congratulate you on being able to achieve that. That's a great milestone in your life.
Yeah, and I'm very happy to receive it.
Dr. Daniel Christoph, medical oncologist, University of Colorado, the Anschutz Medical Campus, where he works at Dr. Fred Hirsch's Biomarker Laboratory. And Dr. Christoph is the recipient of an IASLC Young Investigators Award.
Thanks a lot, and thanks for the nice conversation with you.